They've been warned, and it's a warning we should all heed. Stay tuned, and I'll show you one simple way that you can be prepared for whatever is coming our way. Hey guys, it's Jara with Wicked Prepared. Welcome back, everyone. And if it's your first time visiting us, welcome. Feel free to hit that subscribe button and stay a while. You know, I've noticed something lately as I've been out running my errands, doing my grocery shopping and things like that. Shelves seem to be getting emptier and emptier again. We're hearing more talk of shortages, and we're seeing it more and more with our own eyes. I think that I've personally become less in tune with what's going on over the last couple of years because I, like many others, don't spend as much time inside the grocery stores as I used to. I've been doing pickup orders so much of the time, it's become really kind of the norm to do a pickup order or get delivery from the store right to your door. So I do notice as I'm doing my online shopping that I see things out of stock a lot, and sometimes things will remain out of stock for an extended period of time, but it's not quite the same effect as walking through the store and seeing the empty expanses of shelves. And then more recently, we started hearing it rumored that institutional kitchens were warned to have 10 days of food on hand in case of prolonged supply chain disruption. Institutional kitchens, that would be things like hospitals, prisons, nursing homes, things like that. Now, locating an original source for this piece of information is a bit like a wild goose chase, but what I usually find is that things like this usually originate from at least some kernel of truth. So if this is what they're being warned and this is what our government is mandating, it begs the question, what do they know? Do they know something that they're not telling us? Because my first thought is having a 10-day food supply is always a good idea. It's a good idea for all of us, all the time. In fact, that would be the bare minimum, especially if you have a whole institution full of people who are depending on you for their every meal. So what has changed? Why the sudden urgency? I mean, there are a whole plethora of things that it could be, not the least of which is going on overseas. That situation is always evolving. It could be a fuel issue that they're expecting. It could be tensions escalating at any point in the supply chain, whether it be rail transport or maritime transport. It could be an impending financial collapse. There is such a huge percentage of our banks that are insolvent or potentially insolvent. Whatever the case may be, it's clear that there are a number of factors to watch. And really, this just underscores the fact that we all really need to be ready for the possibility of supply chain failure for any of these reasons and more. And we need to be ready to fend for ourselves and really plan for a period that could potentially be much longer than 10 days. We all need to have a good, balanced supply of shelf-stable food on hand, as long as you have the space and the money. And honestly, where there's a will, there's a way. I think that for most people out there watching, it might take some figuring and finagling, but almost anyone can eke out some space in their home and some dollars in their budget to build at least a modest, basic food storage. It may not be easy, and it may require some discipline and some thinking outside the box, but it can be done. I think most of you out there get it. That's why you're here. But we need to spread this message and make sure that our friends, our families, and our neighbors prepare themselves as well, because that's where a lot of the danger will be. It will come from the unprepared. Fortunately, there are a lot of folks who do get it, a lot more than there used to be, but then there are a lot of people who kind of saw the light, started to build a food storage for hard times, and then at some point recently they've kind of said, okay, danger's over, I'm not using this stuff, and then they just start getting rid of it. Everything they had built, giving it away, throwing it away. That's just not the way it works. It has to be maintained as a long-term lifestyle, because if you give it up, then what? You see the next crisis coming, you run out and buy it all over again. So many things can come at us with no advance warning at all. And even if you do get a bit, that's not prepping, that's panic buying. Preparedness is planning and preparing for the worst of times during the best of times. I think the problem lies with people who are stockpiling food for emergencies that they wouldn't eat otherwise. Your food storage should be an extension of your normal everyday pantry, and you should just rotate through it, and this should be practiced until it all becomes second nature. So when you plan your food storage, take a look at how you actually eat. What meals do you normally eat? Take a look at those meals and think about which ingredients are shelf stable that you can stock up on, and then take a look at the perishable or fresh ingredients you use and figure out shelf stable versions or substitutes. I often recommend people start out by planning a week's menu of meals that you can make with all your stored ingredients and put those things away, those meals. Then you can add another week with a different menu, or just repeat the first week over again. If you do that, you've just built a 2-week food supply. You know it's complete, you know it's balanced with foods that you will eat. You won't be existing on beans, rice, and beef jerky, and you won't run into any surprise missing ingredients that you didn't think about and plan for. Then make sure to rotate through those in a certain amount of time and replace them on the other end. I'm beginning to wonder if maybe there's a good chunk of people who just don't cook at home, and that's why some people just have such a hard time with this concept. And that is a truly foreign concept to me, because we always cook and eat at home. We rarely ever eat out or even get takeout, pizza, fast food, things like that. I don't know. Let me know down in the comments. Do you generally cook and eat at home? And what about the people that you know? What I thought I would do today is put together an example week worth of shelf-stable meals. I'm going to put it all together in one tote box because I do think it's a good idea to have something portable and ready to go. So if you do have to leave your home, I mean, obviously that's a last resort. We want to stay in our homes, on our home turf when at all possible. But if you're ever in a situation where you do have to leave and it's unsure what conditions you'll be facing when you do, it's a good idea to have a food supply that you can just grab and run with. And this will be a lot more useful than grabbing like a 5-gallon bucket of dry beans or something like that. So let's get started and I'll show you what I've put together. This is just a simple, basic menu. This is things that I know my family would eat. This is something that I hope might be helpful, and it can definitely be adapted a million different ways to suit what your family needs and likes. So I did start with just getting a tote because I wanted a tote to contain everything. This is I chose this one honestly because it's cheap. It's one of the cheapest. It's not super sturdy. This is a Sterilite 58 quart. There are certainly sturdier totes that you could use if you wanted to. This one is see-through, which could be a negative or a positive depending on how you look at it. But I know this is large enough to contain everything I'm going to put in it, and it's inexpensive. Now, I planned my meals based on a family of 4 because I think that's a pretty typical family size. Our family is bigger than that. Your family might be bigger or smaller than that, but you can adjust or multiply these based on your needs. I just chose family of 4 because that was simple and typical. And I did plan for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for 7 days for 4 people. I'm going to start by showing the dinners and I'm going to work my way backwards. So I did get a couple of items that I got that are going to form a basis for several different meals. And that is a package of spaghetti and a package of long grain white rice. Now this spaghetti, this is a 4-pound package. I chose this because it was cheapest this way. I think it was $3.46 for the 4-pack, whatever it was. I think it ended up 87 cents per pound. I'm only going to use 2 pounds out of this box, but then I'll have the other 2 to use for something else. And the rice I'm going to use in several different meals. Now this package says that it has 20 servings. So if you're talking about 4 people, you could use this in 5 different meals. Now I do realize that the serving sizes they put on packages are probably a bit smaller than the serving sizes that many of us would typically eat as Americans. But I'm just using this as a basis to go off of. I feel like number one, if you're feeding a family of 4, quite often you're feeding some kids, and small children sometimes eat less than the serving size. Number 2, something like this rice, for example, is going to be used as a basis in a meal. It's going to be mixed with other things, and so it's going to stretch further. And then the other thing is these meals, they're definitely going to keep you fed. They're going to keep you from starving to death. You might not eat like a king, but you're going to get some food in your belly 3 times a day. You can always supplement this with snacks and other items. And additionally, you really don't want to have leftovers because in a lot of times of emergency, sometimes we have no power and you don't want to be opening your refrigerator, or you just have no refrigeration at all. So you want to make sure that you're going to be consuming everything that you're cooking and not have leftovers you have to deal with. So like I said, I'm going to use 2 of those 1-pound packages of spaghetti. That's another reason that I liked this 4-pound box, is because the individual pounds of spaghetti come in a bag, which is going to take up less space inside of our little tote box here. Some brands of spaghetti are probably sold in bags. You may find a better deal depending on what you have available for grocery stores in your area, but for me right now, this was the best deal I could find for pasta. So I'm going to do 2 different pasta meals. Pasta is inexpensive, it's filling, it's satisfying. Most people like it, and it's pretty quick and easy to fix. I chose to use a red sauce and an Alfredo sauce so that we can have 2 different meals and you don't feel like you're eating the same thing over and over again, even though you're eating pasta twice. I'm going to add vegetables with these meals. You can have green beans with one, peas with the other. Now this is not going to be a super protein heavy meal, neither one of these, but these 2 veggies do have a little bit more protein than your typical veggies, especially the peas, which have 3 grams of protein. The green beans have 1 gram. Now you could upgrade this if you wanted. You could throw in a can of chicken to put with your Alfredo. You could use whole wheat pasta, or if you were worried about the protein content, you could use the high protein pastas. Of course, that's going to add a little bit to the cost. So next we're going to have a couple of dinners focusing on the rice, or based on the rice. The first one I'm going to do is going to be a fried rice. So I'm going to use a can of mixed vegetables for that. For mine, I'm going to do a Spam fried rice. Now, you will always hear me refer to this as Spam, even though I know it's not. It's luncheon meat. It's the Great Value brand. I buy this because it's less expensive and we like it, but I always refer to it as Spam. So I'm going to be doing a Spam fried rice with the mixed vegetables. To do fried rice, of course, you're going to need some kind of oil. This is a very small bottle from Dollar Tree, so it's perfect for this application. This should be plenty of oil for any meal that we have in this whole box for the week. We're going to need some soy sauce. This, I think, also was from Dollar Tree. This is going to be more than I need for this meal, but then you'll have the rest of the bottle to season your other meals if you need it. If you have a handful of takeout packets, by all means, throw that right in here instead of the bottle of soy sauce. But if you do open this and don't finish it and you don't have refrigeration, I know it says refrigerate on the bottle, refrigerate after opening, but I gotta tell you, my soy sauce always lives in my pantry. I do not have room in my fridge for it, and it's always fine. If you didn't want to do the Spam, you could do chicken fried rice instead. You could add a large can of chicken. If you wanted this to be a little bit healthier, you could upgrade your rice to brown rice. Just remember that's not going to store as long as white rice, but you should be probably rotating through and cycling through these boxes every year or so is what I try to do. Another way you can upgrade this meal is by adding a couple servings of shelf-stable scrambled egg mix in a little glass jar if you have it on hand and you want that, but I think it's perfectly fine without it. I think it would be fine just like this. The next meal I'm going to do with the rice is going to just be serving the rice with some chili on top. This is just a Walmart chili and this is a Dollar Tree chili. Right now for me, Dollar Tree is the cheapest place to buy the chili. Couple cans of that, put it over the rice. It's going to stretch both things further, the chili and the rice. And then serving that with a can of corn on the side. I know that corn is not the healthiest vegetable. I don't even really consider corn a vegetable, but you know, sometimes it's not going to be perfect. So that is another meal using our rice. So now we've done 4 dinners. The next meal I'm going to do for dinner is going to be rice-based, but it's not going to be this white rice. It's going to be something different. We like to have yellow rice with seasoned black beans over the top of it. That's really tasty. You don't need any additional seasoning. I was going to serve this with some fried slices of the Spam, and you could also put a canned fruit or vegetable if you wanted with this. I am not going to do this. I'm going to keep it simple. I think that the beans for me is enough plant matter for this meal. For my next dinner, I'm going to be using a couple cans of beef stew, and I'm going to serve that over a couple of pouches of mashed potatoes. These are the Just Add Water buttery mashed potatoes. They're super easy to make. Just boiling water is all you need. So this is going to be a complete meal that's going to be comforting. The stew has the meat and veggies, and then we've got our starch right here. This is going to be a complete meal that's comforting and easy to fix. And for my 7th dinner, my last dinner for the week, I'm going to do a beef stroganoff. So I've got a couple of these pouches of stroganoff noodle sides, and I've got a jar of roast beef. Of course, you can use the broth that this is packed in as part of the water to cook your noodles. Now, these noodles do require, or they call for, some milk to be included. I am going to talk about milk here when we talk about breakfast, so towards the end of the video. But for this, I'm just going to throw in one of these small cans of Carnation evaporated milk. This is a 5-ounce can, and that will be great to use for that. And then I'm going to serve some canned carrots with this for a little bit of color, a little bit of different veggie than what we've already had. Now, if you wanted, you could use like a hamburger helper instead of this. You could multiply or divide the number of packages you use based on what your family needs. I find that the amount of pasta is what really matters. The meat can stay the same. This container does say it contains 3.5, so almost 4 servings of meat. When I make multiple packages of hamburger helper, for example, I don't double the meat because that's the expensive part of the dish. Just doubling the pasta portion will fill more bellies easily. So this is what I have for my 7 dinners for the week. So next I'm moving on to my lunch meals. I did leave the rice right out here front and center because this is going to be used for lunches as well. Like I said, this is going to be used in several different meals, and they're going to be used in breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So the first meal that I'm going to do for lunch with the rice, now keep in mind these meals are going to be probably a little bit lighter because they're lunches. So for this one, we're going to just do chicken a la king, and we're going to serve it over the rice, and that's going to make it stretch a little bit further. I do have 3 cans of this because these are pretty small cans. In fact, it says on the back that 1 serving is the whole container. Of course, if you've got children, that could be different, and if you're serving this with rice and other things, it's going to stretch a little bit further. I'm also going to put a can of veggie with this. This is peas and carrots. You can do whatever you like. This could either be mixed right into it or served alongside. So for the next lunch, I'm going to do a tuna salad with crackers. So this is just a large can of tuna. You can do however many cans of tuna or pouches of tuna that you would want for your family. If you don't like tuna, you could certainly do this with chicken instead. And you could also use something like a deviled ham spread or something like that. These crackers I picked up at Dollar Tree. This has 6 individual packs. I really like to get things like this at Dollar Tree just for lunches like these. Now, if you're serving 4 people, that means that 2 of the larger people or the hungrier people could have an extra pack of crackers. Of course, you're going to need some mayonnaise to serve with this. Now, these little small containers from Dollar Tree are perfect because it's not a lot of extra mayonnaise. It's just a little bit. The other thing that you can do is use mayonnaise packets, especially if you have them saved up from fast food or takeout and things like that. And then, of course, you're going to want something to go with this, so I'm including some canned fruit. So for another simple lunch, I'm just going to do some Kraft mac and cheese. Who does not love Kraft mac and cheese? I love the stuff. My kids love the stuff. I'm going to have a can of peas with this. Now, macaroni and cheese requires some additional ingredients to mix it up, but what you can actually do is you can actually mix mayo in for the mac and cheese in place of the butter and milk. And the other thing you could do if you didn't want to do that is, use another one of these small cans of evaporated milk or something like that. I am going to talk about some other milk options here towards the end of the video when I talk about breakfast, so stay tuned. Peas could either be served on the side or you could mix them right into the macaroni and cheese. We sometimes like to do that. If you wanted to upgrade it a bit more and have some more protein, you could always add a small can of chicken or tuna or dice up some Spam to go in that. For another simple lunch, I'm going to be using a couple packs of these teriyaki noodles. These are really tasty. I'm going to be adding a can of chicken. You could add a small can or a large can, whatever you want. And then I'm going to serve that with a can of green beans. That could either be mixed in or served alongside as a side dish. For my next lunch meal, I'm choosing to do some ramen noodle soup. I've chosen 3 packets of ramen, and then to that I'm going to add some canned chicken. You could do large can, small can, 2 cans, whatever you wanted. And I'm going to also add in a can of mixed vegetables. This is going to make it more like a complete meal. Now, there's 2 kind of camps for ramen, people who like to drain the liquid and people who like to leave the liquid in. I personally prefer it drained, but if you're doing something like this, leaving the liquid in and having it as a soup is going to make it more filling, make it seems like it stretches further. So, and we're going to be adding some protein and some vegetables and make it a little bit more of a meal. But honestly, I think ramen can be a meal all by itself. And then for my final lunch meal, I just have a box of, this is basically like tuna helper, but it's just a generic version. And then, of course, you need a can of tuna to go with that. And then this box also does ask for some milk to go with it. So once again, we're going to go over the milk options. You could throw in another can of evaporated milk. The good thing about this is because it is evaporated, that if you use it full strength, it's going to be extra creamy, but you can also dilute that with water and have twice as much milk. Speaking of water, obviously many of these meals do require water to prepare them or to add into them. I'm not putting water in my box, but obviously you should have water stored in your home and you should have water stored with your Go gear so that if you were to need to eat out of this box, you would have water available. And of course, a lot of these items, you're going to be cooking this. So obviously if you can be cooking, you can also be boiling water. So you can be sanitizing water that way. So you can use additional water sources if you have the ability to boil or if you have a water filter and things like that, which you should definitely have. And then of course, if you wanted to, you could add another veggie or fruit with the tuna helper type of dinner. So this is my lunch meals, my 7 lunches. And now we're going to move on to breakfast. So now moving on to breakfast. And once again, I'm leaving this rice front and center because you can also have rice for breakfast. Now, I've been promising you I was going to talk about milk. So for my first breakfast meal, I've included a box of cereal. Now, this box contains 8 servings, so you could use this for 2 meals. We are going to repeat some meals with breakfast, especially because just in the interest of saving space and making this so that we can condense this into one box, sometimes we're going to be using things multiple times. So this box of cereal can be for 2 meals, just like we're getting 5 meals out of the rice. So for the milk, I am enclosing a couple of these quart containers of shelf-stable milk. These are from Dollar Tree. They have a different brand now. I just pulled things out of my pantry to do this demonstration, but obviously if you're putting this together for yourself, you're going to want to use the freshest items possible. Buy everything fresh. And there are going to be some items in the kit that I'm putting together today and showing you that aren't going to last as long as some of the other items. Obviously your canned goods and things like that are going to last a very long time, but things like cereal and things like crackers, they're not going to last as long. They will last past their best by date for sure. The best by dates on those items are into next year, but they're not going to last indefinitely. I know this from experience. They're going to become stale or they're going to become rancid. I've had that happen, you know, to both of those types of foods. Another one is the ramen. That's not going to last forever. So you're not going to want to put a box like this away for, you know, 5 years. What you would want to do is put this away and maybe once a year revisit this and cycle through some things, rotate some things out, make a fresh box. This milk is another one of those items that's got a shelf life of a little bit over a year, but it's not going to last forever. This is enough milk right here to have 2 different breakfasts of cereal. So you could throw in another one of these if you wanted extra milk for any of the other items that I showed, if you didn't want to use the canned milk or if you just wanted to have milk, you know, for various things. Another option for milk, if you want something that's going to have a little bit longer shelf life and take up a little bit less space, is going to be a small can of instant milk like this. I don't have any of the small cans on hand right now because I typically buy this in the large number 10 cans, but this is the size of the can. This is sour cream, not milk. This is just something I happen to have in that size of can. So you can see the size of the can, and one of these cans of the instant milk would be equivalent to almost 4 of these quarts of liquid milk. So it would be a little bit space saving. It would have a lot longer shelf life, and you'd have a little bit of extra milk for some of these other applications. You could cut out, you know, the little cans of evaporated milk and things like that. You can use it as a coffee creamer. Someone recently let me know that it makes a really good coffee creamer, and I tried it and it is great. It doesn't have to be, you know, mixed up with liquid or anything. Just put it straight in your coffee powdered and it's great. So that is another option for milk in these if you don't want to use these shelf stable milks. Definitely go with a good tasting milk that's good for drinking and things like that. Like this one, you don't want to use those grocery store, you know, powdered milks that you can get. Those are pretty awful in my opinion. I don't know, maybe there's some people out there that like those, but in my opinion, those are better used for cooking and baking than they are for actual making of milk. Another benefit to having the instant milk powder is it would also cut down on the issue of having leftover once you've opened up the liquid milk, whether you use the canned or the cartons. If you don't use it all up and you don't have refrigeration, then you're probably going to end up wasting some. So with a powdered milk, you can mix up only exactly what you need and you don't have to worry about having extra. Right now this milk is 60% off, so I am stocking up. So I did grab a couple of the small containers just to use for purposes like this, in addition to another case of the number 10 cans. For breakfast, I also am including a container of instant coffee. This is just from Dollar Tree. I am not going to live without coffee, no matter how dire the emergency. I have to have it. I just put in instant because that's easy. You could also do these boxes of individual packets, especially if you're picky about the brand. This is a better brand. They usually do have these at Dollar Tree. This is what I was going to do, but this only contains 7 packets for around $1 or $1.25, depending where you get it. This one contains 32 servings, so that was a better deal where I'm going for a whole week's worth of coffee for multiple people. Another option that you could use is something like this, which is individual packets of cappuccino. These are going to be complete with the sweetener, with the milk and everything. So if you are a coffee junkie, you might want to consider something like that. If you like to have milk or cream in your coffee, I've already mentioned a couple of options. You know, you could use this kind of milk. You could use the instant milk powder. You could also throw in a small container of powdered coffee creamer, or even a bunch of the little individual packets of coffee creamer. Same with sugar. You can throw in individual packets of sugar or whatever sweetener you prefer. But I am going to have a small container of sugar here that I'll show you in just a second. And so we would just probably use some sugar out of that if we needed sugar for our coffee. I don't take sugar in my coffee. So now that we've got coffee and milk taken care of, the next couple of breakfasts that we're going to do, because we've used 3 different meals worth of this rice, and so we have 2 meals left that we can get out of it. And so we're going to do a couple of meals of sweet rice for breakfast. I used to do this a lot in college. You just take the leftover rice. Of course, if you're in an emergency situation and you don't have refrigeration, instead of cooking extra at dinner time and having it left over, I would probably cook it fresh in the morning. And then you just add in some milk. So you can either use this kind of milk or the instant milk powder, or you can use some more cans of the Carnation or something like that. You add in some milk and you add in some sugar or honey. We're going to use sugar for simplicity's sake. I kind of prefer honey, but just because we can use this, this is just going to be easier. So I got this small container of sugar that can be used for anything we need it for the whole week. So some milk, some sugar or honey, and then usually I would put in cinnamon. I grabbed this thing of pumpkin pie spice because it's largely made up of cinnamon and other things that taste similar, and this was a smaller container. I got this at Dollar Tree. They had cinnamon, but it was a really pretty big container, so I thought I'd rather have this small container. You can do whatever you want. If you have a container of cinnamon at home, you can just put some into a little baggie or a little small glass jar or something like that. So a couple of servings of sweet rice is going to be another breakfast. And then I'm going to do oatmeal. Now, like I said, some of these breakfasts might be a little bit repetitive and they might be a little bit boring, but really we just need something that's going to nourish our bodies and get us started, give us some energy, something that's going to be easy to pack up and have available when we need it. Now, Dollar Tree has a perfect little bag of oatmeal that is just plain oats that would be perfect for this purpose, but my Dollar Tree was out, so I just put some in a Ziploc bag. Using quick oats would be the best option. Of course, you can use the sugar and the pumpkin pie spice or cinnamon, whatever you have, on the oatmeal as well. The other thing that you could do if you'd rather is you could just use individual packets of instant oatmeal. We do that a lot as well. Whatever flavors your family likes, I would go with at least 2 or 3 packets per person for each meal that you plan to serve of oatmeal because they're pretty small packets. You could also use a mason jar as an option to contain some oatmeal. Mason jars are really great because they're super airtight. They are a little bit heavier and a little bit more fragile, obviously. And then for the final couple of meals, I am going to do pancakes with syrup. So this box contains 12 servings of pancakes. So if you're feeding 4 people, that could be 2 meals worth of pancakes. This is probably a little excessive on the syrup, but I couldn't find a smaller container. If you can find a smaller container or little individual packets, that would be great as well. If you wanted to fancy up your pancake meal a little bit, you could always add some bacon flavored Spam in that you could fry up to give a little bit of a bacon flavor to your meal. Now I'm also going to include a couple of packages of freeze-dried fruit, and this is to go with the pancakes and the oatmeal. I'm using the freeze-dried because I'm really trying to avoid adding any extra weight. This box is going to be pretty heavy because of all our canned goods. So I thought in this case I could add the freeze-dried instead, and these weigh basically nothing. Now I kind of find when packing this box it's really best to put most of the heavy canned items on the bottom and then layer up from there. If you want to, you can try to combine each meal's ingredients together and keep them together in the box. I've done that when we go camping, and I've used like reusable thin fabric grocery bags to keep each meal together inside of my tote. That's usually a little bit less space efficient, so I am just going to pack everything all together and put my canned goods on the bottom. You can always include, you know, your printed list of what your meals are to make sure that you remember when you go to actually take this box out and use it in an emergency, or even if you're just rotating it because it hasn't been used and it's been a year or so. Of course, it's not going to really matter if you mix up which veggie you are serving with which meal and vice versa. So, you know, it's really not that big of a deal. Okay, so our box is all packed up. It's ready to be put away, stashed away in a closet, in the cellar, somewhere. And now you know that you have a complete week's worth of shelf-stable meals for 4 people, breakfast, lunch, and dinner on hand and ready. This box is pretty heavy. It's quite heavy, and that's mostly due to the fact that we have a lot of canned goods in here, and then of course the liquid milk. I can lift this without too much trouble, but it is heavy. So, you know, it would be easier to tote around if it were in a sturdier box. I will say that. If you're a person who has trouble lifting a lot, you might want to divide this into 2 smaller packages, 2 smaller boxes or buckets. The only way that you could really reduce that weight significantly, besides dividing it into 2 packages, would be to swap out freeze-dried items for a lot of the canned items, the fruits, the vegetables, the meats. You could swap out freeze-dried versions of a lot of those, and they would have virtually no weight at all, almost. So that would lighten the box a lot. Of course, the trade-off with that is that you would then need a little bit of additional water to hydrate those items. Of course, like I mentioned before, if you are cooking this food, you obviously have a way to boil water and sanitize water through boiling, so that might not be a huge issue. You wouldn't need as much extra water as what you would give up by getting rid of the cans, because of course the fruits, vegetables, and meats in those cans are packed in quite a bit of additional water besides what's contained in the items. The bonus to that is that you can use the liquid from those cans. You can include it in the liquid required for cooking your recipe, or you can use it to flavor things, like you could use the juice from a fruit can to flavor your oatmeal, things like that. You could also just drink the liquid out of those cans if you need a little bit of extra sodium for electrolytes, or a little bit of extra sugar for energy. That's in a lot of those liquids. So whatever you do, don't discard the liquid from your cans. Definitely always use that. Of course, don't forget to include a manual can opener in your box. We do have a manual can opener in our emergency cooking kit that we would have to use in conjunction with this, but it doesn't hurt to throw one in the box as well. Just an inexpensive one will do the trick. I haven't had very good luck with the ones from Dollar Tree, but the cheap ones at Walmart do just fine for me. If you're making multiple boxes, you might want to throw in instead just a simple military can opener into each box. I sat down to add up the cost of everything in this bin. In figuring the cost, I went with the cheapest price that I could find for each item. So usually the store brand option, because that's generally what I would buy. If I showed a name brand here, it's probably because either I got a really good deal on it with sales and coupons and rebates, or I got it as a freebie, or maybe it was given to me by someone. I went with the prices at Walmart and Dollar Tree, and I chose whichever was lower between the two of them. Those are stores that I have available to me, and I think they're accessible to the most number of people out there watching. I added up only what I put in my bin. I didn't include any of the optional additions that I mentioned if I didn't include them in my bin. I tried to estimate a cost for a portion of a larger container used, for example, the soy sauce or the sugar, where a meal was only going to use a portion of that container. I just estimated. I didn't get too high tech into those calculations, so my numbers won't be perfect, but they are just a rough idea. Of course, I gave some options for upgrading, and if you choose some of those, your cost might be higher. Likewise, you might have other stores available to you with better sales and better prices than what I have, or maybe you're a really crazy extreme couponer and you can get really awesome deals on some of these items, and then you might even get a lower total cost. But calculating everything this way, the cost of everything in the bins was far less than $100. Less than $85 actually, and the lowest I was able to cut it down to, it actually came to just under $75. So that is 3 meals a day for 4 people for a week. As I was doing my calculations, I did realize that I only did 6 lunches. Somehow I missed that, so I did double one of the lunch meals, and I chose the cheapest meal to double, which was the macaroni and cheese meal. So I doubled that one so that we have 7 meals. And I did add that cost in. So that is 3 meals a day for 4 people for a week. A total of 84 meals for, let's say, less than $80. So you could easily take a $100 bill and put together this bin, including the cost of the bin. And you could also buy water and probably throw in a few snacks. That's very budget friendly, but I do realize that it can be hard to come up with an extra $100 all at once sometimes. So just remember that you can do this a little at a time, one day or one meal at a time, one item at a time if you need to. Use the box you already have on hand that you don't have to pay for. Fill it up as you go. I did notice certain meals that were cheaper than others as I was adding up the cost. The pasta meals were very inexpensive, of course, and the breakfasts were super cheap. So you could always change things around, do more pasta meals if you're on a tight budget. You could do breakfast for dinner. Make it work for you. Okay, guys, there it is. This is just an example of a week's worth of shelf-stable meals. I hope this was helpful to someone, but like I mentioned, this is really very adaptable. You could take this basic idea and change it up, make it fit your needs, your family size, your nutritional needs, your taste preferences, but however you do it, do make sure that you're building a food storage or checking out and improving on the one that you have, because there is something in the air. There's definitely something on the horizon. It never hurts to be prepared because something is always happening. So get this done now before it's too late. I know we will have some viewers out there who say they can't do something like this because they only eat fresh food and they don't eat all this packaged stuff. And first of all, let me say that is great. I applaud you for that. I do have to wonder sometimes how fresh is the food that you're getting, really, because I mean, if you do a little research into how quickly produce loses its nutrients after harvest and how long and far most of our food travels to get to us, unless you live in a very favorable climate and you primarily eat from your own garden or a farmer's market, your fresh food may not be as nutritious as you believe it is. I mean, food preservation was a step forward for our society, and that's one of the reasons. Not all food that is shelf stable has to be packed with preservatives and chemicals and sodium and all those things. So really, if that's your dietary preference, then you just have to find foods that will work for your food storage and fit into your nutritional goals. It doesn't have to be Chef Boyardee and top ramen. Check out places like Azure Standard, where you can find all kinds of natural and organic products that can be used for food storage, a lot of it. If you like your food fresh and unadulterated, then good quality single ingredient freeze-dried foods are probably going to be the best fit for your plan because they're closest to fresh in quality, they're preserved without any additives or chemicals, and they do have a much longer shelf life so that they will last longer if you know that you won't be using and rotating your food storage as frequently. And lastly, you want to make sure that you have a good supply of seeds as part of your food storage plan. Honestly, that's a good idea for all of us, but not only seeds for a garden, but especially seeds for growing sprouts and microgreens, because that can be done quickly, easily, indoors, any time of year. So it's a great way to add some fresh nutrition to an emergency diet. Just please, please, please don't rely solely on the idea that you'll grow all your own fresh food, because unless you live in a very favorable climate and have a lot of land, it would be exceedingly difficult to truly produce all the food that you need to survive. And no matter where you live, there's always the chance that something's going to go wonky with the weather, some kind of pest is going to get into your garden, some kind of infestation, or any host of other things that can severely affect your crops, and you don't end up with what you were planning for. So while growing fresh food is a great option that we all should do to the extent that we can, you still need a food storage. Those two things should be a complement to each other. Bottom line is, guys, get prepared, be prepared. There's really nothing to lose by being prepared, but a whole lot to be lost if you aren't prepared when something happens. I hope this has been helpful. Don't forget to click the thumbs up down below. Check the description box for links to anything that I might have mentioned. And if you made it all the way to the end of the video, leave me one of these emojis down in the comments. And make sure to check out this playlist up here because we have a whole bunch of ideas for meals that can be made entirely with shelf-stable ingredients. I'm Jara with Wicked Prepared. Survive today, thrive tomorrow. We'll see you next time.